But let's talk about add to temperance, patience. To temperance, add patience. Now, when you hear the word patience, let's see, here's where we are. Here we are. Add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge temperance, to temperance patience. When you hear the word patience, the thought that comes to my mind, and the way we usually use the word in common discussion, we're talking about waiting, aren't we? And it's kind of a calm waiting. Just calm down and wait. And somebody said, if you think of it, just calm down and wait, that's patience. People get agitated because they're having to wait. I think of waiting in line or waiting in traffic or something like that. I tell you, the word has a lot more to it than that. It's a very rich and in-depth word that in the Greek, it's translated by the English word patience. But we're going to do a word study on that Greek word that's translated patience. I'm reminded of my father's prayer. Give me patience and hurry. And that's kind of the way we might think about patience sometime. But let's see what this word is. Now, look up the lexicons. The Greek lexicons. I went to the Greek word, and I'll show you that in a moment. But I looked at 3 lexicons to say, how do they say the word is used? That's what they're doing. And the first use is endurance. In fact, if there's any one word that would probably better translate that word patience, would be endurance. But look how they elaborate on this. Their judgment, looking at the context of how the word is used, this is cheerful endurance, hopeful endurance, continuance, constancy, steadfastness. I like this. Not swerved from deliberate purpose, loyalty in suffering and trials, sustaining, perseverance, adherence, endurance of affliction, and the word we often associate with it, waiting. Waiting. Give it time. Give it time. That's patience. Well, you see, that word is much richer word than we just think of calm waiting, isn't it? It involves a lot more. Now, here's the word in the Greek language, hupomone, if that's the right way to pronounce that. It comes from 2 words, hupo and mone. Hupo means under. Under. That's the first part. The second part of that word, mone, means remain. You can kind of heard remain, rome. You can kind of hear that in that word, can't you? To remain under is what it is. I think about someone that has picked up a load and they're carrying it. And you know, the longer you carry a load, it seems like the heavier it gets. Well, what do you do when it starts getting weary? Well, you cast it off. No. Patience means you stay under it. You have accepted a responsibility and you stay with it. You don't shuck it off when it starts getting hard to bear. That's when you really put in your effort to stay with there. The word is translated 28 times in the New Testament by the word patience. But once it is patient continuance. Once it is patient waiting. And once it is enduring. Now there's a similar word. This word is a noun. There's a verb form of that word. And when you transpose it in from the Greek into English letters, it's kind of interesting. You've got hupomone, and then you just switch the E and the O, and you got hupomino. Well, hupomino, that is the verb form of the word patience. It's used 17 times in the New Testament, the noun form 31 times, the verb form 17 times. Here's how it's translated. 11 times it's the word endure. 3 times patient. 1 time suffer. 1 time abide. And once tarried behind. Well, that gives us an idea of what the word we're talking about now. I don't know if the English word, single word, patience can capture everything that's involved in that Greek word. And what I want to do now is show you how that word is used in various places in the New Testament. We're going to look at different passages. So with that understanding of what the word patience is talking about, let's look at some of these passages. Some of them will be familiar to you, but it might give you a different insight onto what they mean. Here we go. James chapter 5. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receiveth the early and latter rain. That's what we do when we plant a garden, isn't it? We put the seed out there, and then we just have to wait. We're not going to be able to put the seeds out there and get the harvest in a day or two. We have to wait. The seasons come and go. The rains come. The sun shines. We weed it. And eventually it will come for those who wait. Well, that's patience. Be ye also patient. And then it says this. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Establish your heart. That is, get this firm. Make sure it's steady. You dig in and you wait this out. And in God's own time, he'll come take care of this. Now going on, James 5. Take my brethren the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience. In just a minute, I'm going to show you the example from the prophets. But look at the other example. Behold, we count them happy which endure. There we go. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. The patience of Job. We're studying Job in here on Wednesday night. The way we commonly use the word patience, we might not have applied that to Job. All the complaints Job is making, all the things he's trying to say, and arguing with his 3 friends about why this has happened to him. Well, one thing Job did do, he endured, didn't he? He endured all the calamities that occurred. He endured all the rebukes from his friends. He maintained his integrity. And though he did not understand God, he held on to this idea somehow God can work this out. He doesn't understand what happened to him and why God did this to him. And he thought God had brought all this on him. He didn't understand it, but somehow this will work out. And I know it wasn't me that caused this. And he maintained that. That's what it meant by the patience of Job. But what about the prophets? The prophets. I want to go to Hebrews chapter 11. After you go through that great hall of faith, he talks about the prophets. And he talks about them in general, but let's read this. Hebrews 11:32, what more shall I say? The time would fail to tell me of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah. That's 4 of the judges. David also, the king, Samuel, and of the prophets. What about those prophets? Who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in flight, turned to fight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover of bonds and imprisonments. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. And all these, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise. God having provided something better, some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. And then look at the application of what all they endured. Application in chapter 12. Wherefore, seeing we're compassed about by so great a cloud of witnesses, and that's who he's just been talking about, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Run with patience. If you've ever done any running, marathon running, I tell you, you start off, it's not so bad, but after a few miles, you've just got to dig in and determine, I'm going to stay with this and get through this. Run with patience. That's endurance. And then Jesus is the example. Looking to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. What are our examples for patience? We got Job, we've got the prophets, and we have Jesus. You see how rich that word is? In Luke 8, in verse 15, talks about the parable of the sower, the seed falling on the ground. It says that on the good ground are they which an honest and good heart, having heard the word, keep it and bring forth fruit with patience. Wasn't that what we was talking about when he talked about the husbandman putting the seed in the ground and waiting for the harvest? And this good seed, it sprang up. It didn't immediately produce fruit, but the plant survived. It didn't wither in the sun. It had good root. It wasn't choked out. And in time, it produced that fruit. Produced the fruit with patience. Luke 21:19. In your patience, possess ye your souls. Now, this has to do with the hard times that come. And what do? Well, you endure them and you don't panic. You keep your senses. You keep your head straight. You know what you're after and you keep focused on your goal. And so you possess your souls. That gets to that self-mastery we've been talking about that comes with temperance, doesn't it? In your patience, possess ye your souls. Romans 2 and verse 7. That's where we talk about patient continuance in well-doing. These are those that are seeking honor and immortality and life. And through patient continuance in well-doing, that's what you achieve. You know, you try to do things right and you do things well, and sometimes it looks like it's not making much difference. But if you stay with it, it does. And so, patient continuance in well-doing. Romans 8:24 and 25. We are saved by hope. But hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man seeth, why doth he yet hope for? But if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. You see how we're saved by hope? Hope is a confidence of things that are going to come to pass, not just a wishful thinking. And when we have that confidence, we can wait, and it'll be worth the wait, won't it? So we endure. Romans 15:4-5. Whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. Well, that's what we were talking about with Job. That's what we're talking about with the prophets. And I want you to notice how it combines patience and comfort. Patience and comfort. That's the possession of your souls, that comfort that he's talking about. In your patience, possess ye your souls. But look at how those two ideas are in the following verse. We're talking about Jesus, where it says, now the God of patience and consolation. Patience and comfort, patience and consolation, patience and self-possession. The God of patience and consolation grant you to be like-minded toward one another according to Christ Jesus. You know, this really has to do with patience concerning our brethren. It's been talking about here in Romans chapter 14 and 15 about those who have personal convictions. Oh, I can't do that, and I don't think you should. And say, well, I've got liberty, I can do it. And the point here is you don't have to settle all that. You've got to love one another. Sometimes brethren can be difficult to put up with, can't they? But what we do, we have that patience, and we work through it, and we grow together in Christ. And so this is that patience and comfort that we're to have in that context. The church at Colossae. Paul writes commending the church at Colossae. He's warning them of potential dangers that they face from all kinds of teachings all around about them. But the church at Colossae, he commends. And he says, for this cause, after hearing a good report from them, from this cause, since the day we heard it, do we not cease to pray for you and desire that ye might be filled with the knowledge of his will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding. See, that's why he's writing this epistle to them, to fill them with that knowledge and spiritual understanding. He said that ye might walk worthy of the Lord in all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work, increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might according to his glorious power, unto what end? Unto all patience and long suffering with joyfulness. That idea of suffering with joyfulness is such a radical idea in the New Testament. But here it talks about patience and long suffering with joyfulness. That's what will characterize a Christian. The book at the church at Thessalonica. Paul had to leave Thessalonica due to the threats on him, and he went to Berea, and they chased him down there, and he went to Athens, and then he made his way into Corinth, and he was so discouraged. But he got good news from Thessalonica. He sent Timothy back to them with this letter. And what he writes in 1 Thessalonians 1, verses 2 and 3, we give thanks to God always for you all, making mention of you in our prayers, remembering without ceasing your work of faith, your labor of love, and patience of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ in the sight of God our Father. Work of faith, that's how they did it. They did what God said. That was what they did. They worked. But then the labor of love. Labor talks about the effort they put into their work, and what was motivating them was the love. They loved what they were doing, and they knew it was good, and then they stuck with it. The patience of hope means they just stayed with it and endured. He wrote them a second letter, 2 Thessalonians 1 in verse 4. He said, we ourselves glory in you and the churches of God. In other words, I'm telling all the churches about you because you're such a good example up there in Thessalonica. He says, we glory in you and the churches of God for your patience and faith in all your persecutions and tribulations that ye endure. You see how patience is linked with endurance? It's linked with trials. It's linked with persecutions, and you just stay right with it through the midst of that. That's patience. Hebrews 10, 34 through 36. Knowing in yourselves, ye have in heaven a better and enduring substance. That's the hope. He calls it the great recompense of reward. He calls it the promise, that ye might receive the promise. That's all tied to the hope that they have. Here's what he says. Ye have need of patience. That's how you're going to achieve that reward. Let me read it all. Knowing in yourselves ye have in heaven a better and enduring substance. Cast not away therefore your confidence, which hath great recompense of reward. For ye have need of patience, that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. You don't just do it and say, well, that's done. You do it and you stay with it. And it's that hope of what lies ahead that gives us that confidence that we can stay with this to the end and achieve that reward. And so you have the patience. It's used in the book of Revelation. God knows about our patience. Jesus knows. He writes letters to the 7 churches of Asia, to the church at Ephesus, to the church at Thyatira, and to the church at Philadelphia. In Revelation 2:2, 2:19, and 3:10. I know thy patience. He knows what they're going through. He knows they're holding fast and they're enduring. And so God is aware of that. And then elsewhere in the book of Revelation, when we read about the trials that the saints are going through and the suffering that they are enduring, and yet they are not leaving the Lord, they're staying faithful to Him, they're overcoming. He says, this is the patience and faith of the saints. He says a similar thing in Revelation 14 and verse 12. Here is patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus Christ. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about patience. Regardless of all the pressures and persecutions and trials and difficulties in the way, we're going to keep His commandments. We're going to do what the Lord said. We're going to stay with this all the way to the end and endure, knowing there's a reward for us at the end. So, add to your faith. And remember that word add, lavish upon. You believe, you've obeyed the gospel. That's good. There's your faith. Lavish upon that virtue, the passion. I'm going to be a righteous person. I'm going to do what's right. Lavish upon that knowledge. I'm going to learn more and more about God so I can be stronger and stronger. Lavish upon that knowledge, temperance. I'm going to get control of my passions. And lavish upon that patience. I'm going to stay with this. I'm not going to deviate. My grandfather that made it through the Depression had a couple of sayings that I remember. I was just 6 when he died, and this is one of those things where I'm wondering, well, do I remember that, or just do I remember being told about him saying this? Seems like I can remember him saying it, though, and that is, keep on keeping on. That was one of his mottos. And there was another one. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. He was a man of patience, and he endured, and he got his family through those times. And that's what we're to be. That's behind that word patient. Much more than calm waiting in line, isn't it? I mean, it's requiring much more of us. Next, we're going to go to godliness. Godliness. And I was talking about that this morning. You remember women professing godliness? Remember what that was? It's easy to read into that word God-likeness, but that's not the word. The word means a reverence toward God. It's how you think about God. When you think about Him with reverence and respect, hallowed be thy name is the spirit of godliness. And so we're going to add to that patience now, godliness, and we'll discuss that next week. Do we need more patience? Well, all of us could probably say, yeah, I just wish I had more patience. But the kind of patience we're having here doesn't come easy. It's the trial of your faith that worketh patience. That's what James said. And so as we go through the trials of life, think about this. I'm going to turn this thing that the devil has sent to discourage me into something that builds me up spiritually and builds my patience. And I'll endure to the end. That's what we all need to do. If you need to be baptized into Christ, you need to come forward and let that be known. And if you failed somewhere to endure, you can come back and get back on track as we stand and sing this invitation song.